We are asked to rationalize the denominator. Here we have the square root of 2x divided by 3y. The first step is to write the square root of the fraction as the square root of the numerator divided by the square root of the denominator. So the given expression is equal to the square root of 2x divided by the square root of 3y. Now for the next step, to rationalize the denominator, we need the denominator to simplify perfectly. Notice right now we have the square root of 1 factor of 3 and 1 factor of y. We need the radicand to be a perfect square, so we should be thinking they would simplify perfectly if we had the square root of 2 factors of 3 and 2 factors of y. Notice here, 3 times 3 or 3 squared is a perfect square, and so is y times y or y squared. And therefore this simplifies to 1 factor of 3, 1 factor of y, or 3y. And therefore, if we want the denominator to simplify perfectly, we need to multiply by the square root of 3y, which will give us a radicand that contains 2 factors of 3 and 2 factors of y. But to create an equivalent expression, we must also multiply the numerator by the same square root. We multiply the numerator by the square root of 3y as well. Now let's go ahead and multiply. Looking at the denominator first, we have the square root of 3y times 3y. Let's just write that as 3 times 3 times y times y. In the numerator we have the square root of 2x times 3y. Let's write that as 2 times 3 times x times y. And now looking at the denominator, we can now simplify because 3 times 3 is a perfect square, and so is y times y. So focusing on the denominator, the square root of 3 times 3 or 3 squared is equal to 1 factor of 3. The square root of y times y or y squared is equal to 1 factor of y. The denominator is now 3y, which is considered rational. And now looking at the numerator, we can see nothing simplifies here. We still have the square root of 6xy. The expression is now simplified, or we can say the denominator is now rationalized. Let's look at a second example. Here we have the square root of 5x divided by 18y, which is equal to the square root of 5x divided by the square root of 18y. But notice how in this example we can simplify the square root of 18y, so let's do that first. The square root of 18y is equal to, well, 18 is equal to 2 times 9. 9 is a perfect square. Let's write this as the square root of 9 times 2y, and because the square root of 9 is equal to 3, this simplifies to 3 square root of 2y. So let's write the expression as the square root of 5x divided by 3 square root 2y. And now let's focus on rationalizing the denominator. And again, we should be thinking if we had 2 factors of 2 and 2 factors of y under the square root would simplify perfectly, and the denominator would be rationalized. So for this example, we multiply the numerator and denominator by the square root of 2y. So multiplying in the numerator, we have the square root of 5x times 2y. Let's write that as 2 times 5 times x times y. In the denominator we have 3 times the square root of 2y times 2y, which gives us 2 factors of 2 and 2 factors of y. And 2 times 2 or 2 squared is a perfect square, and so is y times y or y squared. So simplifying, we can see nothing simplifies in the numerator. The numerator is the square root of 10xy. In the denominator, we have 3 times the square root of 2 times 2, or 2 squared is 2, and the square root of y times y or y squared is equal to y, and 3 times 2y is 6y. The final simplified expression is the square root of 10xy divided by 6y. Again, this is simplified, or we can say the denominator is now rationalized. I hope you found this helpful.